Leonardo was clearly interested in depicting water in movement. As an artist as well. I mean, he loved to draw it. He loved the shapes and the forms that it took. But water was also important to him because of the four elements which he believed made up the earth: water, earth, air, and fire. Water was the most visible element, the element that it was easier to study when it was moving. So that was significant to him, and that was significant to him because it meant that he could study movement and study it scientifically, in the sense that what he wanted to do with water in movement was not simply depict it, but also to understand how it moved and why it moved. So he was trying to find the underlying laws, so to speak, of motion, because he believed that if you understood the laws of water in motion, then you could understand the laws of all movement, of machines and of human bodies as well, of other phenomena. And water was the easiest way to study, to get a grasp of those laws, because it was the most visible one. And there are many drawings which relate to his practical interest in water. I mean, you must always remember that Leonardo was not only interested in phenomena, natural phenomena, from the point of view of pure science, so to speak, but he really started off with a practical interest. I mean, he was an engineer. I mean, he was employed to work on canals, to construct canals, to construct barriers in rivers, to control the flow of rivers, to protect riverbanks from soil erosion and from flooding. So there was a very practical interest in Leonardo's interest in water. And you can see that in many of the drawings in the exhibition, especially in the Leicester, where, for example, there are a whole series of drawings where he places different shaped obstacles, different shaped objects in the flow of water, in the flow of a river, to see what happens when an object which is shaped like a cone, or an object which is like a square, or an object which is shaped like a crescent, how that alters and affects the currents of water in a river. And so there's a lot like that, and there are also wonderful drawings of the Arno, and that was a project where the Florentine government, the government in Florence, wanted him to explore the possibility of building a canal as in order to direct the waters of the Arno. And there are some spectacular drawings from the Arundel notebook in red chalk, where you can see that he's gone out and he's paced along the riverbanks of the Arno, and he's measured with his paces the length of each section of riverbank. And again, that was for a practical reason. But there are also drawings where you find him, as I say, trying to understand the laws which underlie the motion of water. And there's a particular one from the Arundel which is very striking, because it's a picture of water, of waves rolling onto a shore, and over the drawing of waves you can see that he's tried to draw geometrical coordinates. So he's already trying to understand the movement of water in geometrical or mathematical terms, if you like, not simply in itself, not simply to depict it, but to try and understand how do these work in terms of proportions and shapes? Why does water form this shape? There's also a wonderful drawing from an Arundel sheet, where we have an actual experiment with water, which Leonardo clearly built in his workshop, in his studio, which shows a step structure, and it shows a jet of water, a strong jet of water falling down over the steps. And what interests Leonardo is what happens when that jet of water bounces off one of the steps, and you get a reflex wave which spirals back. He's interested in those shapes of the spiral or the vortex, and you see those shapes everywhere in the exhibition in all his drawings. And this experiment is fascinating because in the text alongside it, he says that if you put two glass panels on either side of the steps and the water, you can observe and draw, as he has done in his drawing, you can observe the spiraling shapes of the water as it bounces against the step. And that's a wonderful example, again, of the way Leonardo would build models in his studio in order to test out theories and in order also to observe better, because everything really in Leonardo is based on observing well and observing as accurately as he could. Some theories about why he writes like that. I mean, first of all, he was left-handed. He wrote with his left hand. But in addition to that, he also, as you say, he writes in mirror script, which means that he reverses the letters. So not only does he write in his left hand, but he's also reversing the letters. So a B written by Leonardo, looks like a D to us. So that's what he does. People, I think, for a long time thought that he did this to conceal his work from others. But the prevailing theory now is that he wrote like that simply because it was the most convenient way for him to write as a left-hander. It meant that his hand moved across the page more comfortably, and also you didn't smudge the ink as the hand moved across. One important thing about Leonardo, of course, is that he had no formal schooling. He was sent to an elementary school, what's known as an abacus school, where he learnt to count and he learnt to read. But he was never sent to a formal school, so possibly he just devised his own way of writing, and it stayed with him for the rest of his life. But there are sheets in particular, there's one sheet in the exhibition which shows you that he was also capable of writing from left to right in the sort of ordinary way. And that's an interesting passage because there he talks about the arrival of a student or an apprentice who's come to work with him in his studio. And we think that the reason he wrote so that everybody could read it without any effort is because it recorded an official record of the arrival of somebody and how much they had to pay and the date that person had come. So in that instance, he didn't feel the need to write with mirror script. I mean, he begins, when he, for example, in the Leicester notebook, when he starts writing the sheets in this organized way, he starts at the back, what we would call the back, because he also moves through the sheets from back to front. So in that sense, he's not only writing back to front, but he's also the text moves from back to front. And it's interesting that in the Forster notebook, which is where the leaves are numbered by Leonardo, that's the little bound notebook from the V&A, the numbering, he numbers from the back. So the last leaf is numbered 1, and then it moves forwards by, with 2, 3, and so on. So he did everything, as it were, backwards.